First of all, I just want to introduce this series of the Witch and Wednesdays. Um, I've been meaning for a long time to provide more educational content, and I realized I think I'm just overthinking the parameters. So I figure better to get going and make adjustments later as I see fit than never get out the gate because I'm too busy obsessing over the details. So here what we have is this platform. It may change, it may alter over time. So definitely provide feedback if you have it. This time works for me to record, so I'm going to try to do that. Whether or not it's convenient for people to be able to attend live, you can have access to the recording. So just let me know if that's useful to you, and if you're finding value in it. Today, I wanted to start with a discussion on the working altar and the act of creating a daily devotional practice. So one of the things that's really important to me is not only showing up on the high days, on the holy days, the cross-quarter days, the solar holidays, or the SBATs, the full or new moon, depending on which you tend to honor, perhaps both, if you are a bit of an overachiever and you like to do both. But what I really wanted to discuss is that the meat of the work is in forging a connection that you have to whichever divine or subtle forces call to your spirit. One of the best ways that we can do that is by practicing bhakti, practicing devotion, practicing setting our own ego aside and remembering that it is not entirely on us, or to a certain degree, even for pagans, there is still a value of prayer. I would say even more so when you're working with the many gods or the many differentiated subtle forces, the tier below the all that is intelligent and can directly work with us. So especially when you're working with those different divine forces, they will tend to have a little bit more of direct interaction, a little bit more direct personalities, perhaps. It becomes more important to develop a relationship with them. So it's definitely not like a hierarchical, someone has their foot on your throat and you have to beg for mercy, beg for forgiveness. It's more of a developing relationships, like you might develop relationship with a plant by growing that plant, tending that plant, watering that plant, harvesting that plant, using that plant in medicines and for teas or in fragrant herbs to burn. It's all about developing relationships. So we develop relationships best by having open communication, having constant interactions. And the first place where we meet, where we start developing harmonious relationships with subtle forces, is in that daily devotional, is at that working altar. So that's where I want to talk about today. The really cool thing about altars is that you can, it's a human tendency to create them, from as simple as some cool rocks and nuts and plants that I found on a walk and feathers that I found in a walk that I arranged in a certain way at the base of a tree. That can be an altar. That can be a working altar. It can be a devotional project. So don't be like me. Don't overthink it. For years in my practice, I was closeted and not in a kind of safe place to practice openly. And I had all of my sacred tools in a shoebox. And anytime I wanted to practice, I would take them out of the shoebox and I would arrange them. And then I would take it down when I was done. And a lot of that was done in private. A lot of that was done where the people that I was living with were not able to witness and perhaps condemn me for my practices. And if you are in a position where you are doing your witching from out of a shoebox, I commend you. I respect you. That works just as well. If you are a person who likes ornate and elaborate altar displays, that is certainly an option and a creative expression. It's a way of tailoring your altar to work for you and to do whatever you need it to do. Ultimately, your your altar is going to be a reflection of yourself. It's going to change over time. So there might be times in your life where what you need is something that's very, very small, very, very simple, maybe even something that doesn't look like an altar to other people. Maybe your altar needs to be high up on top of a dresser because you have tiny fingers who might grab all of your tiny, delicate, pretty things and mess with them and get them all sticky. That's fine too. I'm here to encourage you and give you the tools to be able to set something up for yourself, not to tell you the ways in which you can do it wrong. There will be no hellfire and brimstone if you do not correctly create or cultivate an altar, and there is no punishment for not using it enough, for not doing your daily devotionals. Daily devotionals are an option that many people like to utilize to keep it simple and to remind our consciousness that we are inherently divine, we are inherently connected to the divine, that we are not plagued by hyper independence in such a way that we're trying to do everything on our own and we're unable to work together and cooperate and ask for help, and that we're focusing more. It's a spiritual narcissism to forget that you have forces that you partner with and that you have relationships with and that you enter into relationships with, and that it's not all on you and it's not all about what you want, that there are people that there are spiritual subtle forces that want to partner with you, that want to work with you, that want to help you to help others, to help you to be a light in the dark, to help you to be a good community member, and to, take part in this grand symphony and this grand dance called life that we are all woven into. So that being said, where to begin? How do you begin? Once again, it can be simple and it can be accessible. You don't have to have any expensive altar items, ritual tools. None of that is required. All of that has value, has merit, and can help to bring your consciousness into a ritual state, into a meditative state. It can take you down from your beta brainwaves and into an alpha brainwave state. You can manifest more easily in that state. You can listen to your subconscious more easily in that state. You can bring up wisdom from the depths of your body and in your emotions in that state. So simply creating for yourself a little corner of your home that is devoted to things that allow you to feel relaxed, allow you to feel supported, allow you to feel whatever connects you with that liminal space, that spiritual space, that place of change. So if you are trying to protect your practice and your faith from the greedy eyes of the unworthy, some simple things that you can utilize can be nice crystals, little trinkets, many little trinkets and crystals and things you might collect in the forest are things that nobody would bat an eye with. If you create a little corner where you have a fancy cup that you really like and you really prefer, and a nice crystal that you really, really like and that you found, these are pretty innocuous items. Pair it with some, a plant or a flower or something that you've collected. You can burn a little incense there, or have another representation of air. Well, what you've done is you've incorporated correspondence, because as everything is a microcosm of the macrocosm, as within, so without. Everything that you place on your altar can have significance and can correspond with an energy that you're trying to incorporate into whatever it is that you're working on. But it doesn't need to be complicated, and there's no way to go wrong with it. So if you are trying to set up an altar and you haven't done so before, just know that it is okay to put on it what you feel called to put on it, and that you don't need to have a better explanation than that. Crafting altars is something that you learn throughout time, as you practice and as you are taking action and being involved in your craft. You're going to learn more correspondences. You're going to make ritual tools. People are going to gift you ritual tools. Honestly, I think the best thing about being out of the closet in the years that I've been out now is that now everybody buys me cool stuff, and I just don't need to work so hard for my ritual items, my altar items, because they end up being the type of thing that people will gift to you. Because once people learn that you're a dragon and you like cool, shiny things, they bring you cool, shiny things. Here's a pebble. Let's be friends. This is for you. So that's definitely a thing that a younger version of myself was initially intimidated by and overwhelmed by. I was young. I was like, how am I going to collect all this stuff? I need how many herbs? I need a cauldron and a ritual blade, and I'm tallying it up. I'm doing the math, and um all of those things are wants and things that you probably will eventually collect over time. But definitely not things that are essential and things that are required. And your own craftsmanship and your own art is an amazing personal touch on an altar. So if you can't purchase a ritual blade, but you want a blade for your altar, you can draw one, and then that correspondence and that representation can live on your altar. You can do little post-it notes for your little Altoid container altar that have a drawn representation of the elemental tools that you would like to incorporate. Totally reasonable. You can stick a little birthday candle in there, and then you have a candle and you have fire, and you can use that for meditation. The options are pretty much endless. But beyond the simple creation of your altar, keep in mind that you can have as many as you like. There is no rule that says that you can only have one. I generally have gotten to a point where I actually have several. So I have a household altar that is kind of devoted to my home protections, and kind of acts as almost like a grand central station where it's an anchor. It's holding in a certain energy of in and out between. I'll take items from this central altar and place them on various other altars, change them out. The upkeep of my altars is in itself a devotional act and a ritual act. So I have the healing altar that I set up in ritual at the Virgo new moon. At every full moon and every new moon, I go through that altar and I remove any flowers or nature offerings that I've made. I return those back to the earth to be composted, turned into fertile soil. I tend to return those at the north side of my house. I have a little outdoor space set up that is kind of devoted to the element of earth, and I really enjoy composting my offerings there. So that's a beautiful aspect to the practice and an aspect to the daily devotional that I think I haven't found spoken of enough in books. These are the day ins and day outs of your craft, and developing relationship with these spirits, and recognizing that though what you're working with is non-physical, there are physical things that you can do to interact with the non-physical. There is a space between. There is a space where we can touch the non-physical, and the non-physical can touch us and communicate with us. And we practice cueing our brains into that wavelength when we are doing these daily devotionals. So cleaning the altars, resetting the altars, making sure the water in your chalice is fresh, or the water in your offering bowl is fresh, or the offerings, if you're doing earth offerings in your offering bowl, are fresh. To light a candle at your altar, to burn an incense at your altar, to take a moment and sit at your altar and pray, to breathe, to just interact with your altar. That's a daily devotional. You can offer song, you can offer music at your altar. That can be a really powerful way to connect. You can offer movement at your altar. If you place your altar near a space where you will typically do your morning exercises or your yoga, that can be a devotional offering that you bring to the altar. These are just ideas meant to spark your imagination, to give you some tools and some tricks to help connect you with the idea that actually you can begin wherever you are, and that anything that you routinely do can be an integral part of this practice. I was just checking to make sure I didn't have anybody trying to get in and being unsuccessful. That being said, moving on. So we have healing altar, that's been mentioned. I have an altar that is particularly devoted to my Reiki practice. So I have some things that I chose to arrange on there were a set of stones, 7 stones that correspond with the 7 chakra system. To help bring those into healing and into balance. And then I have a bell for clearing out negative energy. I have a censer for herbal smoke, whether that be to cleanse my space prior to doing a service or after doing a service. It is also if the person that I am treating is able to be amongst smoke without it affecting their breathing or their allergies. It can be an effective way to pair with Reiki to actually do a smoke cleansing on the person. And then I have a chalice with water because some of what might be necessary at that altar can include pulling negative energy out and off of a person. And one of my preferred ways to transmute, to pass on attachments and darker energy forms, particularly spirit attachments. Sometimes people who have cords or attachments to those who have passed on, who were not necessarily well. Sometimes those attachments can become pretty toxic. And so what that can feel like and look like is when you're walking through life living with this voice in your head and you're like, oh yeah, that was my great grandmother. She was constantly a jerk and like constantly saying mean things to us kids. And, her little voice now it lives in the back of my mind and criticizes me every time I try to do something. I can remember my grandmother, those type of little things, I'll use water to pass those on. So water is my elemental connection to the realm of the ancestors. And so it acts as a gateway and a portal for me in my energy work to pass on spirit attachments. So that will be at my altar, right? And that makes sense for that particular altar. An altar is a place to house your tools. It is a place to house a particular energy. It is an ally. It is an integral piece of your practice and of your process. So the idea that you can craft that altar, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It would be like a surgeon being prepared for a surgery by having their tray table with all of their tools handy. This is what the crafting of your altar can be. I have an altar dedicated to the element of earth that has a stone tree on it, a gifted polished piece of driftwood that looks like the axis mundi to me. It looks like the world tree in the central axis. Keep that there. That's where I tend to leave offerings for my I have a statuary of a gargoyle, and that represents the protections that are in place on my home as well as on myself. As a gargoyle is an ally spirit for protection. It's significant the way that they were placed upon the churches. They are to be watchers. And like any relationship you have, there ends up being a devotional aspect. So having a physical representation of that spiritual energy and placing it on the earth altar and being able to give concrete offerings to this gargoyle spirit for protection. That's a good idea for that altar. Let's see. I have a seasonal altar that represents the work that I am currently doing on my own personal work, and that is aligned with the season that we're going through. So this one changes, and I'll change it at the high days. Right now, I am very close to changing out the altar that I have because it's going to be shifted over from all of the pieces and all of the correspondences that I have associated with the descending part of the year, the fall energetic. I'll actually be transferring it over to winter this weekend for the new moon in Scorpio. So the new moon in Scorpio will be when I will change that out. And from the new moon in Scorpio all the way until, I think I'm going to keep it probably until the new moon in Aquarius. We're gonna keep it from essentially Samhain to Imbolc. It will be affiliated with winter that station. You can change things out when you feel called to, more frequently, less frequently. That's all personal. That just is corresponding with my seasonal energetic work. So that's my working altar that I do most of my primary devotional work on, and it lives over here. You can kind of see it. It doesn't have to be big. Once again, we're talking about correspondences, not extravagance. Although extravagance can be a fun way to do it too. There have definitely been times where I have felt called upon to have a larger altar. A lot of people will put up an altar to their ancestors. I do have an ancestor altar. That one I feel is a private altar. I keep it it's actually in my bedroom, partly because that's the west side of my house. And once again, I affiliate the energy of the ancestors with water, and living in the West feels good to me, feels correct for me. And that altar is my own private devotional work to my own connection with the ancestors. And there are as many traditions as there are in the world, that is how many ancestral traditions there are. I think something that I've noticed that's universal to human people, whatever their ancestry and their cultural origin, is having worship or devotional practices for and about the dead, those who have passed on. One of the things that I did utilize my ancestor altar for, you can give. I have a long line of Celtic ancestry, Welsh, Brittonic, Irish, Scottish, Norse, German. I have the whole collection of Northern European ancestry. And when I was struggling to memorize the runes, I got a little cheat sheet, and it just has the correspondences. It has the rune and their affiliated tree and their affiliated letter, and a little snippet of some of their interpretations or meanings. It's just a single sheet. That was something that I placed upon my ancestor altar in order to receive some of the wisdom from my distant ancestors. So my ancestor altar is mainly got photos of people that I knew. None of the people that I knew and that lived during my lifetime were connected with the rune script and were themselves runic magicians. That's not in my current or recent ancestry. However, far enough back in my ancestry that exists. So my ancestor altar was able to hold a resonance of kind of pulling that ancestral wisdom down through the generations, down through the ages, and actually leaving it up there helped more of the it helped to weave extra threads of connection between myself and my interpretations in the runes. I would recommend it. It's not necessarily something that somebody might think of doing, but it works a bit like osmosis. So you can utilize your altars in that way. They're meant to be tools. They're meant to serve you. You can interact with them in the ways that you are feeling called to interact with them. And that's between you and your spirit and your deity. It's a very Gnostic practice. It's, there's no right or wrong way to do it, because it's not about anybody else. It's not about how we treat other people. It's about our own expression of spiritual. So that was a really powerful way to use an altar. And you don't have to have multiple altars. You don't have to have any altars out. I think through the practice of having to keep my altar contained in a shoebox and take it out and put it back and take it out and put it back and take it out and put it back makes me very inclined to enjoy making little altars, because for me and my spirit, the act of creating all these little altars and creating all these little spaces is an affirmation of the safety and the space that I've created for myself. So as I have a little pocket corner altar devoted to each of these different things all over the place, what I get to say and announce in my life and in my world is that I'm finally allowed to be me. I'm finally safe from all this persecution and from all this backlash for the things that make my soul sing and my spirit sing. So it is not inherently valuable to other people to have these multiple altars. It particularly suits me because I had to keep my deepest core self and what brought me joy and happiness kind of contained in a shoebox, living in a shelf in a closet. The irony did not escape me as I literally kept my altar and my spiritual practice in a shoebox on a shelf up in a closet. I feel like every time I put it away, I feel like I'm putting myself away. I'm just tucking it in this box and putting it up. So having these altars is like hugely meaningful to me. And I say that because, it should be meaningful to you as well. And, don't be intimidated by the thought of having all these multiple altars if that's not for you, because I'm just telling you about what's for me, what works for me. So take what resonates and leave the rest, but definitely don't look critically on your own practice if it's working for you, because what works for me and what works for you will be a little bit different. Let me see some other functions for an altar that you might have or you might find. So creating a little altar that holds the intention that you are trying to express before doing something big. So if your day is going to call for you to have courage and be strong, then you might create a little altar before leaving and engaging in your day that holds correspondences of that strength. You might light a candle. You might light a candle with the intention of reaching out to any of the warrior deities that our martial deities. We might reach out to Aries. We might reach out to Mars. We might reach out to Athena. We might reach out to Freya. Perhaps I mean, Odin is technically more of a messenger, but perhaps that might be the appropriate energy that you're looking for, the rulership quality. Or if you don't yet have any specific relationship with any specific energies, you can be vague. You can reach out to any well ancestors who would like to assist you in this process, any divine spirits who are in alignment with your intention and your aims and your goals. You can invite them in your prayer, right? And you can also reach out to all that is. You can let yourself be in a space of unknowing. Let yourself be in a space of receiving. Let yourself say, hey, I do not hold the reins on this force that is the all that is, but I would like to receive from. I would like to drink from this well. I would like to be a reflection of this energy, a small portion, a microcosm. It's a drop in the ocean and the ocean in a drop. I would like to hold that space but I do not feel the need to say that I know exactly who it is or what it is that is helping me. It can be a general plea, a general bid. And that's where I think many of us or most of us start. I started into my practice back in the days where most of the only information that you could find on paganism was on Wicca. So, my general first pleas and prayers were toward a generic god and goddess, or really the divine feminine, the divine masculine. I might call that the Shiva and Shakti current now as I'm further along in my learning and in my practice. But general is okay where specificity is something that you don't have yet, but you can create an altar that is aligned with your day, your intentions for your day. You can create a little altar. I've created little altars for specific classes, courses, and rituals that I've held. I have created altars to help to key my consciousness into passing on the right wisdoms when I'm doing readings for people. You can use them however you like, and feel free to get creative with them. Now, some ideas about devotionals. So I've already mentioned you can bring offerings to your altars. Some really great offerings are obviously those little things that you feel called to collect as you go on a walk. So leaves, twigs, mushrooms. Be careful touching mushrooms if you don't know what they are. Always err on the side of caution. Nobody knows about the mushrooms. The mushrooms are magic, and that's fine. Leaves, little herbs, flowers. Those are lovely offerings to give. I would consider those earth offerings. You can give offerings of breath. I especially like to give offerings of breath to thank the plant spirits that I am taking earth offerings from. If I'm doing any harvesting, giving a gift of breath back to those plants is an air offering. You can offer, many people offer, again, an earth offering, but many people will offer a coin or a valuable to the plant. I like to think that, perhaps that's replenishing essential minerals and nutrients in the soil as the rain washes over it. But I also like to think of, if I'm going to take from a plant, I like to give back to the plant what the plant needs. And so understanding that that's not arbitrary or imaginary, like this is a living plant spirit that you are actually taking from. So giving back to it, when you give it your breath, you're giving it it's what it breathes in. You breathe out what it breathes in. So that's restoring that connection. Giving water to a plant. We all need water, right? That's a fabulous offering that touches in with something that it needs. You can offer it fertilizer. I feel like that is usually a water and earth offering that you're kind of giving to the plant. You can give it song and prayer. And that'll be somewhere in between air and spirit, touching a little bit with that etheric component. And you could even offer it a fire offering, and that might look like a dance. That might look like a creative offering. It could look like a smoke cleansing. There are a lot of benefits to smoke cleansing that we've looked into, depending on the herbs that you're using and the concentrations that you're using. That can be a way to essentially fumigate. Like, we have that word fumigation, and it comes from the practice of burning fragrant herbs in order to repel insects. So, I don't know if we've done any studies that go directly into, the benefits on a plant of performing a smoke cleansing near it. But if you are a person who feels deeply called towards fire as an element, and you want to incorporate a fire offering to your plants, I would love to see and know, does it help with mites? Does it help with aphids? Does it help to draw beneficial pollinators, or does it help to repel pests? I wonder. I could see intuitively how that might have a resonance, and I feel spiritually that it would make for a good offering. But those things are allowed to be intuitive. So it's okay to do what you feel called to do, even if you don't have a rational or logical explanation for how that works or what it's doing. Just practice going with the urgings of your soul towards how to do what you're doing. So once again, you can light candles at your altar. That's a wonderful devotional. You can light incense at your altar. It's a fabulous devotional. Sitting there, praying there. Let's see. Movement practice, singing, those are all lovely things. Something else that you can do that I feel like has maybe forgotten about a little bit too often is you can make offerings of your craft, of your gift and your talent. If you like to work with wood, you can put something on your altar that is woodworking, especially if you've created it for a deity or divine force or in representation of it. If you've crafted out of clay a little mushroom with a little fairy on top of it, that's a devotional offering. If you put that on your altar, you're doing that in devotion to divine forces. And, these forces respond to that. So that can be a useful thing. Taking time to do divination or to, draw omens or draw tarot cards or whatever discipline you practice to connect with the wisdom of divine forces and receive insight and guidance. It comes back to that stepping out of your own ego in order to partner with these forces, in order to understand that we may not always know, but we can always ask. We will not always receive because that's not always in our best interest, but we can always ask. And usually we will receive guidance. It would be like, I feel like people without divination are people who are navigating, but they refuse to use a map. There is a map. There is always a map. You can always stop and ask somebody for directions. I picture myself, the people who do not do divination practice, who do not have a relationship with any of these divine forces. It feels a lot like the person who is lost someplace they've never been before, won't stop and ask anyone for directions, refuses to let anybody navigate for them, and just continues to stab in the dark. It will sometimes work. You will sometimes get where you're going. I often through a lot of unnecessary trials and tribulations and wrong turns, but you'll sometimes get there. It is not essential that you use a map. It is not essential that you ask for directions, but I feel a bit like utilizing these divination practices corresponds pretty well with taking that time to stop and ask for directions, taking that time to ask for help, and to remember that we always have that available to us. We're not on our own. Excuse me. So those are just some ideas. Different altars you might construct, what you might put into going on your altar. Keep an intention in mind. The altar should serve a purpose. So it shouldn't be random. It's intended to be a sacred space where you engage in sacred practice. Treat it with respect. Keep it clean. Don't set your dirty dishes on it, If you've offered something on it that is alive and decaying like a flower, once it has decayed, remove it, right? You're not praying for decay in your life, ideally, probably. I mean, I'm not speaking for you. You can do that if you really want to, but if it's going to hold the energy of your manifestation, if it's going to hold the energy of what you're trying to bring in, then fill it with things that you want and that you're looking for. Don't fill it with energies that are unintentional. Take the time to breathe, to ground and center before you approach your altar. Treat it as though it's a sacred space. Teach your children and your spouse and whoever else might be in your home that is a sacred space. So they don't come in it and go, "Ooh, pretty," and take all of your nice things off of your altar. Or they don't put things on your altar if it's not a community altar, right? Obviously, it can be a nice practice to build a family altar if you have kind of like an age appropriate thing going on there, or you're not going to run into like choking hazards or anything like that. But when your kids are old enough, if they want to be involved in that, you can have an altar that you all work on together, and you can each offer items to it. I let my kids add items to our ancestor altar in particular, but we don't yet really have a household altar. I just have kind of been trying to teach them to start creating their own altar spaces, and we're starting there. So my son has a little area where he keeps all of his stones because he loves stones. That's his thing. That's his thing that he loves to collect. That's his little penguin pebble that he likes. He likes stones. So he has a whole area with all of that. And, I'm teaching him about doing that practice of keeping it clean, keeping it nice, setting time aside for the sacred and keeping it sacred. But you can work together with the people in your life on your altars if they're supportive and if they want to be a part of that. So that's another idea for you. I pulled, as I was waiting to begin this, I did pull a couple of runes, and I thought it was really interesting. And I wanted to share the message. I feel like it was significant. It's talking about the value of stillness. So the rune Isa is stillness, and it turned up first. It corresponds to ice, but not just like the ice you might find in your drink, but like the ice of the permafrost, of the tundra, of glaciers, the Arctic ice, the ice that has been frozen for 10,000 years, the ice that contains the the DNA of extinct species. We're talking about the ice that you wonder, is there an alien spacecraft or a lost civilization frozen under there? To connect with the idea of this rune and what it represents, it's the absolute zero of runes. It's the when all doing and all motion stops and you are frozen in this state of solidity, this solidity that is not it's not alive, it's not breathing, it is the end of all things. What is there? What is your axis mundi? What is the core of your being? What is the center within yourself that all of everything else revolves around? Where is your North Pole? Where is your North and South Pole? Right? And it holds, I feel like this rune is so significant as as we are walking through this liminal threshold towards winter. I feel like this rune is very significant and very important, because one of the things that most of us fail to do in this society that we are currently living in and in this modern world, many of us fail to hibernate. Many of us fail to do what is in our bones and in our ancestry, in our heritage, in our natural cycles, to withdraw and to retreat and to stay warm and in our caves in the winter. That is our natural instinct, and it is deeply unnatural to be forced to live in this cycle where we must do at the same level day in and day out, year round. So humans want to be very busy and very active in the summer when we're pulling in our harvest and we're handling our herds and we're doing all of this work. And we want to rest and retreat in the wintertime. We want to stay warm. We want to conserve energy. We want to let go of extra activity that isn't necessary. We want to conserve our food supplies. We want to come within. So from an archetypal standpoint, from a energetic and subtle standpoint, in the wintertime, we are all still feeling that urge to retreat and to withdraw and to dial it back and to bring it within and to find our center once more. And I think it's interesting because this rune is paired with Awaz and Tiwaz. So what it has to do with is how good it is for ourself and for our bodies and our vessels and these wonderful temples that house our spirits, We ask a lot of them. We put them through a lot. We push, we push, we push, we push, we push. And often we'll miss indications that the urging is not to try harder and force and push through, that actually sometimes we're being encouraged to dial it back, to slow down, to turn within. And I thought it was really interesting pairing this with this particular topic and devotional, because what it really kind of speaks to me about is that we don't always, the answer is not always more force. We should not always be trying harder. It is not always a personal flaw why things aren't working out for us. Sometimes things aren't working out for us because the universe is trying to guide us, or whatever forces in the universe are currently partnering with us, trying to bring us into a better outcome. And we're exhausting ourselves and trying really hard and pushing ourselves at the expense of ourselves, and in having something that we're trying to prove, instead of really sitting back, sitting still, and thinking about, what do we want? What is good for us? How do we nurture partnership and movement toward the direction that we would like to seek? And when we're trying to seek taking action toward our goals and achieving what we want and throwing that arrow of our energy out there into the world, we're not doing that in a vacuum. We're not alone. We're not absent help and allies and people that we can reach out to. So utilizing altar spaces and daily working altar and daily devotional practices can help to remind us of that we are not alone, that if we're exhausted and burnt out and experiencing obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, it is not always our call to push harder and to try harder. Sometimes we need to take care of ourselves and understand that this is not a hostile universe that we are creating and that we are in. It is in partnership with us. It will sometimes seem hostile to encourage us to slow down if we are running from that. We will experience a firm shove into stillness. We'll be frozen. Our efforts will be like walking in quicksand, or like trying to run through a bog. But this is a blessing, not a curse. It is a resistance that is designed to slow our force, or perhaps encourage us to delegate and ask for help. But to remember that if it compromises us and compromises our well-being and compromises our spirit, then that is not what the all is asking of us. We will be challenged, and we will be asked to rise to those challenges. We'll be asked to work hard, but we will not ever be asked to empty out our cup in service to others. Our cup should always be upright and should always be full, be overflowing, in fact. And other people are more than welcome and entitled to the overflow from our cups, when we are radiant and we are shining and we are giving and doing in the world and we are in service. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it is not in service to pour your cup out for another, because then you have an empty cup. Now you have need. Now you must pull back from others, right? So when we feel like we're doing a service, emptying out our cup for another person, giving a person the shirt off of our back, we're in self-deprecation, and the universe would never ask us. None of the forces in the universe are asking us to deplete and self-deprecate. Martyrdom is not a virtue. It is not a value, right? So sometimes we'll be urged to that stillness. And ideally in that stillness, what we can discover is something about what we need, something about what we truly want, something about what would truly nourish and serve and sustain our spirit. We can take that time and get that guidance and ask ourselves, oh yes, universe, I'm experiencing obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. What direction are you trying to push me in? Where have I gone wrong? Why am I asking for things that are no good for me? Because I know that you would not deny me anything that was truly meant to be mine. How am I missing what this greater ask is? There's a myth that I've been working with, that I've been studying with, that's in the Mabinogi. and it's about Rhiannon. And she's said to ride on this otherworldly horse. And there's a long chase scene where this hero is attempting to. It's said that if he can catch up with this white mare, this woman on this white mare, that she will grant him a boon and grant him a favor. And he chases her over and over, trying. Can't get her, can't catch her, can't get her to slow down until he finally stops and asks her. So the whole key to this is that it like a ball floating on the water that we're swimming our hardest to try and grasp. The harder you try to reach for it, the further you're pushing it away. If you truly want to bring something to yourself, you need only ask, right? Ask and ye shall receive. This is repeated to us over and over and over and over again, and yet we continue to do this. But through the act of creating this still place, this secure place to connect with your spirit and to worship, perhaps we can find our way to the questions that we need to ask, to the delegation that needs to happen, to the boons that we need to be granted in order to progress forward. Then and only then is it the right time and the right place to exert our willpower outward into the world, to act and to take action and to go out there and to do and to conquer. You're a human being, not a human doing. And so your exhaustion should be telling you where you're depleting yourself and where you're pouring your cup out in service to others, but actually they're not being served by that because it's not in service to create empty cups, right? You can utilize your daily devotional to isolate where is it that I need to take action in the world. How can I be in alignment with what is not only my desires, but also the desires of the all. And then how can I be brave? And how can I be strong? And how can I overcome the limitations that I need to overcome in order to grow and in order to thrive? So those can be powerful uses and tools at the daily devotional. And I really enjoyed kind of the input from the runes on that. And I hope that was helpful, and I hope that it resonated. Some tools that I would recommend for your altar that you can begin collecting are items that represent elemental forces. You might call upon fire or air to quicken any works that you're doing. You might call upon water or earth to ground and nurture and nourish any works that you might do. So begin collecting things that hold those energies for you. Allow it to be a deeply individual and deeply personal experience as you collect these physical representations that correspond with your own energy and your own relationship with those forces. For water, you might like bowls, chalices, cups, shells, bones. For earth, you might like stones, herbs, plants, trees, sticks. You might like dirt. You might like salt. You might like shiny crystals, whatever works for you. For air, swords, bells, incense burners, censers. For fire, you might have wands. You might have like weapons. Like I've used arrowheads. That's technically a stone, but it's a fire stone. You can use different so there are certain stones that also hold a fiery correspondence, like carnelian, things that are red, things that are orange. Those make good fire representations. The cauldron is a fabulous fire representation. Candles are a fabulous fire representation. but begin weaving and working with correspondences and with these energies in what you're collecting, and try to remember to touch on each facet, each element, each energy that exists in the world outside of you that you're trying to bring into the world inside of you, into your own internal practice and your own internal growth. And remember just to stop in at your altar, even if it's just to tidy up the little droppings of your incense, or to clear off some herbs that have gone past their prime and past their time, or to maybe you put I have oracle cards that I will pull to reflect my process work, and I'll leave those sitting on my altar for a period of time. Like right now, I have it just down to 2 that I have on my altar. I have one that represents the deity that I'm currently working with, because I don't have a statue for her yet. So she has an oracle card up on my altar. And then I have the card that represents my full moon process. So I'm currently drawing an oracle card that I'm working with from full moon to full moon. And I just change that out every full moon. And then I leave it up there, and then I can see it, and then I can be reminded, what is the work that I'm doing? Who am I working with? What are tools that I use to connect with this energy? And it can be a nice reminder. It can be a nice way to do a deep dive into particular cards or particular energies, that has the effect, like I had earlier with putting the rune paper on my altar. It has the effect of keying your consciousness to that energy that you're trying to bring in and trying to manifest and trying to incorporate, by just seeing it and being near it and looking at it and witnessing it and interacting with it on a daily basis. It can help to hone in on integrating those energies that you're trying to bring to yourself. Ultimately, do what works for you. Do what honors your intuition, what honors your calling, and the benefits are so incalculable, and once you have it there, once you have it ready, once it's already all set up, then it's inviting. If you think to yourself, oh, I'm just trying to get rid of this thought, it's just not working for me, right? Well, if you have an altar already set up, you already have a cauldron there, etc., write a little piece of paper of what you're trying to get rid of, set it on fire. It's right there in your working altar. That's why the title, the working altar. So it's for you, place where you can go to do your work, right? Like a computer desk that is set up with your computer and your printer and your pens and your paper and your whatever else you need in order to be successful at the work that you're doing. But this is for your personal practice work, your spiritual work. It's far easier to just say, yes, I want to burn this, I want to get rid of this, I have this thought, I'm putting it down, I'm doing it right now, and walk to your altar and go ahead and just take care of that, than to like bookmark that for later and be like, yes, and I'm going to have to craft this ritual and I'm going to have to set this up. Nobody can fit that into their schedule. Nobody fits that into their time frame. People who are, if you have desired to do work more regularly and more consistently, people who are doing that are not doing it through laborious like practices that they're curating and setting up every time they want to do something. They just have that already in place. It's already set up. They can just walk to a corner of their house and go ahead and do that. So I hope that this information has been helpful. I hope that it has inspired your curiosity. I hope that you spend time exploring what type of altars you like to curate, you like to craft. I hope that you feel encouraged to start wherever you are. Set something aside, set something up that gives you permission to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes out of your day to breathe or to meditate or to pull cards or to light a candle or to pray, and invoke that energy into your daily life, not just your high days, not just your when you need something, right? When you're working on these daily devotionals, you're developing these relationships, then you have them when you need something, instead of I'm in need and I'm reaching out, and this energy is like, who are you and why would I do anything for you? Like, I don't know you. It's very important to cultivate those relationships, to get to know those forces, to take the time to curate your collection of tools and artifacts, and to practice allowing these forces to guide you, nurture you, and help you to grow and help you to change, to be the plant that sits out there and becomes enriched by the soil and nurtured by the rain and gets strong by the wind that whips through it and the sun that burns in the sky. Reconnect yourself with those natural forces. We do not have to be forever separate from them.